So today, how I'm positioned in my world, when folks ask me, what do? I say a social justice activist because the world needed a title when in fact I just have learned to live prioritizing healing, understanding that I am a survivor, understanding that I have 8 years clean and sober from mind-altering substances. I have not been in a mental institution since 2002.
Wow.
So
good for you.
I think I'm doing pretty good, right? As a child, I was so in love with the dad idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was like my knight in shining armor. He was everything. Me and my mom were in love with this man. And then there was like these two sides of this man, and it was like, whoa, I don't know about this side.
Yeah, like that's a surprise. Yeah,
and then I think about the responsibility of America, right? When it comes down to what we're talking about today with domestic violence and how the majority of how America has been built off of the backs of Blacks, and how the Black male was in such an intricate role for the dismantling of the idea of strength, right? And if they were able to break down that idea of strength, and then he was the protector and the provider of many, and their idea of this male being the protector and the provider being broke down into the harmed, broken folk who's coming back to us and not knowing how to deal with his mental anguish and his physical harms. And so it starts to be like exhibited as he's angry toward everyone that's closest to him, when in fact it's the suppression of what he truly cares about not being able to be expressed. And I feel like America has such a responsibility for restoring those relationships, restoring the relationship of the Black man to himself, the Black man to the Black woman, the Black man to the family, the Black man to community, the Black man to the idea of career. And yeah, there's so much to that for me. It's just, that's my journey right now today, is the restoration. It's an American dream now that the responsibility becomes America's to put up constructs to restore. I remember the first time that I witnessed, it was because of my mom. I'm seeing my mom doing what she loves to do, which is braiding hair. Mm-hmm. And my dad's energy is disrupted because he wants her to be doing something else. So he's feeling like he's in competition with whatever it is that she's desiring to do and wanting her to put his
needs and wants first. Mm-hmm. But see, this is the thing. When you want what's best and you want to love your person the most, and that person wants what's best for their person and to love their person most, the cycle is a circle. So you end up getting back what you want just as a side effect of you giving. So it's like you said, if you see yourself as part of that cycle, it comes back around full circle. So, oh man.
And even more fulfilling.
I know.
Now I'm doing it from a place of overflowing of joy and abundance and peace and calm and ease. And now I'm willing to give out of those spaces of peace and calm and ease and love, not out of I'm depleted, leave me alone. Yeah. Now I got to do this thing because you want me to do this thing. Just imagine if we functioned in a way that when we got to show up, I tell a lot of my friends in the work to prioritize self-care, to dismantle the idea that productivity comes from busy, busy, busy. When productivity comes from self-care and then focused tasks. If I'm taking the time to care for self and I'm full and I'm abundant and I'm overflowing, and then I just focus 30 minutes on a task, I'm gonna do way better than I did if I was just like depleted, so busy, can't focus really, like can't get into the creative brain as much and can't really give from a place of, you could feel the magic when someone's coming in the room overflowing.
Yeah, it's an energy. Yeah.
So whenever I wanted to do something outside of the norm, my body would send me signals like, you sick, you have the flu, you are not getting up. Even when I wanted to leave the abuser, my body would send me the signal, I have the plan put together, everything's ready to go, and my mind is made up. Today is the day I'm leaving. And I wake up and my body's like, you don't feel good. You're gonna lay in this bed. You're gonna come in here with this and that. It's gonna be that again. You'll be okay. You'll figure it out. You'll be here again for another 4 years. Yeah. Because the body stores the memory of the comforts and it wants you to stay within the comforts. And even being an entrepreneur, like whenever I'm ready to take it to the next level, which is basically telling my mind and my body that I'm going to take an act that's outside of what my former thinking would have told me, like they're going to reject you or they're going to say this, or, you know, thinking what other people was thinking, which never has been a successful thing for me because my mind has always told me that people are going to do things much lesser than what I've been able to see as an outcome, because that was my history, right? Getting treated in such ways, and the mind was like, store this. And so whenever I'm ready to take that action, then the body's like, oh no, you don't feel good today. How about feel an itchy throat? You're not talking. And I had to change it. And it was so powerful through meditation. I remember back in 2012, getting a hold of Dr. Carolyn Leaf's book. And that was the only thing that I could really not have resistance to at the time, because Dr. Carolyn Leaf is a neuroscientist who talks about neuroplasticity, but it's like rooted in faith-based practices while she's a scientist, right? So when I got hold of her book and it was talking about these new transmitters that show up every morning, and I made it make sense with like everything is new, you know, when you realize that every day it's a new. So now what do I do with these new neurotransmitters? I build on them by doing what? By doing something that I have not done before. By brushing my teeth with my left hand. Although it feels uncomfortable, I'm teaching my body like, look, you don't get to tell me what to do. I'm telling you, you are my tool, and I'm going to brush my teeth with my left hand today. I'm going to put my shoe on the other foot today. I'm going to go out and say this thing that feels very uncomfortable. I'm going to go out and do this thing. And then it talked about the meditation. And every time I sat down to it, I was like, this is the most stupidest thing ever. I have so many things to do. And you're telling me I'm supposed to sit here and teach my body to listen to me, and nothing is being done. My mind, it was so full of thoughts of anxiety, judgment. what I'm not doing right, what I never done right, how life is horrible and that it'll never get better. And that's the type of thinking that shaped my world. So for over 20 years in my life, I lived suicidal, and I had a lot of encounters with mental institutions because of that. I've attempted suicide so many times that I lost count. And on top of that, I married my abuser of choice. It's like, oh, this one I get to choose. The other ones were just ones that were put in my life, and I just had to grow up with them. But this one I chose, right? I chose not knowing that it was another opportunity, that I get to choose something different, right? It was so tricky when thinking about, this is how I've grown up, this is what I've seen, this is what I've been exposed to. Is there anything else happening in anyone else's world? I remember sitting in the classroom in elementary school, looking at the other students and wondering, like, are they thinking about how to cause harm to someone in the fastest way so that you don't end up hurt? Like, I'm wondering, I'm looking like, if we all in this classroom thinking about this, we're gonna be in a war soon.
But think about that. As a kid, you had enough wherewithal to ask that question, to look outside of your situation and ask what was going on with other people. And that internal seed that you had to look outward and ask those questions and kind of like apply that to your life, that was that little bit of strength that has guided you along with your questions about spirituality and just your ability to question and your need to look out into the world, and your need to research and look out. That right there was your strength, and that is what I see in your face, and that is what I see that you put out into the world, into other people. Not everybody has that. Some need to get that from others. But I see that light and that power that has always been in you. That seed has always been there. Although you've experienced, I mean, we don't know each other very well. We've had one conversation and a couple of text messages.
Right.
Like, when you have that, others can pick up on that, and like as you're telling your testimony, I'm like, I'm putting all these little seeds, these little puzzle pieces together, and I can see why you've been great for now so long.
It's a mirror. It's definitely a mirror. I've learned that today, noticing that what I see is a mirror of myself, and having the courage to accept it, whether it be, and I don't have to judge it, but whether if it be something that I'm proud of or something I'm like, ooh, that's me.
Yeah.
What do I do with that?
Yeah, clean that up right there. Yeah. But you have the power and the strength to be able to face that no matter what it is and do something about it.
Recently, I've released a policy recommendation that I've sent out to a lot of partners within the homeless sector, but I see it more broader than just the homeless sector. I see it something that is needed within the social services, the health and human services, because that is the construct that is going to help America be responsible for healing the harms. So coming from the place of sitting in meditation and asking questions like, what would life be like if things worked out for me? What type of environment would be suitable for the way that I have experienced the world, and many others like myself have experienced. What type of environments do we need for that? And asking myself like really intuitive drive questions that would drive the intuition, and then moving from doing meditation and then not holding myself in the constructs of Christian religious practices into like, I'm gonna go to mental health and I'm not going to hell. I'm gonna go to the domestic violence center and I'm not going to hell, y'all.
Yeah.
Then my psychiatrist, she said to me, LaRae, what if you had people in your world who understood the way that you think? And she helped me see myself. She asked me, she said, have you ever seen the movie Beautiful Minds? And I was like, yeah, I have, but I never really paid attention to like how that correlates to me. It's a guy who suffers from schizophrenia. I myself have been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. And today people are like, I would have never known. And I say, I would have never known either. But it was due to the environment. If you know anything about epigenetics and the ways that our environments weigh upon us. And so my mind was constantly so much in hypervigilance that I didn't trust nothing and nobody. I couldn't listen to the radio. I couldn't watch TV. I had to tell my children, like, look, don't move too fast because I don't trust that.
Wow.
I'm suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
Sit down somewhere and we all be safe.
You sit there. I'm gonna sit here. Just don't move. I'll be the one to move.
But it took for me to take enough time to be in places like the mental health and the domestic violence classes and sit with meditation and get to know that my family history, I have deep-rooted family. I have family members today who are choosing to live on the streets because they lost their minds due to the harms of trauma. And they don't trust living in a space. They don't trust working in America. They don't trust anyone knowing them. So they're like these off the grid human beings. And then I have other family members who live in the mental institutions. Like that is their place of dwelling. That's their address because they have yet to find a way to situate themselves in normal society and be able to navigate it with the way that traumas. I'm talking about family members who were subjected to the electroshock back in the day when they say you crazy, so therefore we're gonna keep shocking you until you get your mind back.
Right. Ooh.
My family migrated from Mississippi. Mm-hmm. You know anything about the Great Migration and the why they did it?
Yeah.
The constructs of slavery. Mm-hmm. So I come from some real deep stuff. On top of that, my dad being integrated into the gang life, which was like a way to keep people safe because police was outrageous when the war on drugs was released. So my life is afforded me the ability to move from why do I gotta go through all of this to show up in a day to I get to practice these things so that I can show up in the day. And then I get to write a policy recommendation and say, look, y'all need to participate in healing the harms. You need to embed restorative practices in the way that social services are interacting with people, and do that by partnering with the people that you provide services for. Imagine, and I got this thing because of racism and understanding that educational institutions have been built by those who were able to tell the story. So their curriculums were designed by those who had the power and the privilege. Mm-hmm. Imagine curriculum being redesigned by the people who have been impacted from navigating services and systems, so that way our social workers are now providing a service to their partners Because these are people who have learned how to navigate I'm not going to curse, but y'all know what I want to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they deserve restoration. They deserve to be heard. They deserve to be seen as the subject experts.
They deserve human kindness. Period.
They do. They deserve a fair chance at knowing that career is possible based on what they've navigated, that housing is possible based on what they've navigated, that dignity is possible based on what they've navigated, and even honor them for navigating such a twisted system that was built to destroy us.
You are putting things in a way that is, number one, really touching, very clear, very comprehensive. Thank you. Because the way that this is coming out of you, like it pertains to the people who need the compassion, and it also pertains to the people who need to right the wrongs. And you're straddling that line in a way that I haven't heard yet.
Why not see them as partners? Why not remove the idea that these are our clients and the people we serve? Like, come on now. Sometimes it's removing the ideas of how we've positioned ourselves within relationships based on constructs, beliefs. Release the belief for a second and be like, what is possible? The noticing of when the body is like telling you, stay in this safe zone. How about we do that within our relationships? Mm-hmm. I think that has been my greatest asset in the work of social justice activism is, LaRae, when are you going to take action on the thing that you're asking, why is this not happening? And because I don't have the resources or because I don't have the privileged power, what do I have? And I was like, oh, well, I have the ability to be in the room with that person. So, well, what can you do, LaRae? You go over there and you say, hi, I'd like to talk to you. And when you have a conversation with them, think about what is it that you truly, sometimes I don't know what I want. I just know that you got the privilege to push a button or to send a paperwork through or to make a phone call or whatever it is that you do with your power and your privilege. Mm-hmm. And I need you to be close enough for me to be able to call you and be like, hey, so what's going on with, I need to understand, help me understand the language, help me understand why we're not doing this. Help me understand where does the advocacy needs to be so that we can do this? Like, how do I help you even shift out of the safety net based on organizational policy, the way we do things, professionalism, and let you see I'm a person and I could be just as meaningful as your daughter. Mm-hmm. And if I was your daughter, that policy wouldn't mean a thing. If I was your mother, that policy wouldn't mean a thing. What is possible? I do it so often that sometimes I'm wondering, like, am I living in this fantastical world in my own head? But I'm gonna call this person anyway. I'm going to believe anyway, because you're talking to a person who lived in such a chaotic world that every day was so difficult to make it through. What else? What could be worse than you telling me no? And I'll be like, oh, okay, well, not today. What we do tomorrow? Okay. Or you not responding and I send you a message back, say, were you really sincere on what you said? And if you choose to be upset with me because I hold you accountable, then I understand those constructs too, because that's how we've been socialized, to be like resistant. And now I get to be mad at you because you holding me accountable. And I'm choosing to not even like you. Whatever, I don't care, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I do. I'm grateful for the well-being community. There's a lot of growth happening there. We're looking to reach out to every state and see about how do we bring in those folks that are all over doing great work but aren't supported by nonprofit or the structures of professionalism. Mm-hmm. But we know that there's people out there in the world that just care about people, and they're just doing stuff. And those are the people that are giving their last to make sure that that neighbor has the sugar that they need to make that Kool-Aid, right? Mm-hmm. Those are the people that are making their couch available to someone who doesn't feel safe enough to go and apply for services because they've been hurt and harmed by applying. And so now they're not really identified as homeless because they have a couch to surf on. Ridiculousness, right? Those are the people that are standing in food lines every Tuesday because they've given their last and because they have not abided by the constructs of professionalism and become a 501c3 or an LLC and all those things that require you to do tons of unnecessary paperwork and move you away from caring from people. And there was a study that showed, and I'm thinking it's Harvard, but it may be another prestigious college that did a study, and they said that the highest wealth, those people who hold the highest wealth are known to have like the lowest ability for empathy. And I'm like, why is that? Because they have to numb out to professionalism.
Yeah. They're taught that money is the most important thing, and emotion doesn't matter, self-care doesn't matter. Because I noticed that those who have made that money, it's like in order to get to that point, the only thing that matters is working. Don't sleep, don't vacation, don't pay attention to family, work, don't pay attention to anything else. So there isn't any balance.
And yeah, that's another thing we need to take action in restoring, is that we could care about people and have good health and have our needs met. And one thing that the well-being community is doing right now is we're looking to co-author a white paper that will go out to the philanthropist community to push that community is invested in. And I'm going to say it, divest in nonprofits and invest in community, because nonprofits are just like the filter for community to do things. And then they're pushing out the idea of how community gets to do things. I get to provide the food for you to stand in the line and get the food. Then why don't you just give the people the money so they can go get their own food? How about, what if nonprofits serve the purpose to identify how to just give? Because we've seen it happen during COVID. We've seen it happen when they were just like, there's this fund, just apply for it, low to no barrier, right? I'll cash app it to you. They made it easy for people to access the funds because they didn't want to go and set up a food station and take the risk of catching COVID. So they were like, how do I get the money to you fastest, most easiest way without me coming in contact with you? So we know it's doable.
Yeah. The need just has, the want just has to be there to make it accessible and easier.
And the interest in seeing that is the way to allow for people to make the choices that matters to them. I remember the first time I sat down with the cycles of violence.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when they told me about going to domestic violence classes, I was like, you a joke. You know, we fight. It ain't nothing about no domestic. It ain't about a one person doing harm to, because the way I grew up in the constructs of gang, it was like, if I feel threatened, I was taught to pick up something. Like I said, I was in elementary thinking, how can I hurt you the fastest in the most effective way so you can't do nothing back to me type of thing, and I could just go on about my day. That's how my thinking was shaped. But when I seen that it was about power and control, it was not about who can cause the most physical harm. The very first time I was like shocked by the power and control dynamic, right? I remember telling before he was the husband, about how I felt unsafe because of an interaction from another guy. And he hit me so hard in my jaw that I felt it dislocate.
Oh my gosh.
I felt my jaw no longer attached to the bones that it was attached to before I said that I felt unsafe because of a way that another guy said something to me. And I couldn't understand why he hit me when I was being vulnerable and let him know I didn't feel safe because this dude said this thing over here. And I remember him stopping and thinking about, oh shoot, her jaw is hanging and I know who her family is. And if she go home, oh, it's going to be smoke in the city. And I remember him grabbing my face and pushing my jaw back in place. I remember hearing click, 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 and him saying, just come to my house. My mind was so confused. Being in his house for a week, not seeing my mom, not seeing my sister, and trying to figure out, like, what just happened? Not going to the hospital. Still today, if I yawn big enough, it'll pop out of place and I have to just shake it back in place. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and it's just hanging again. Like, I don't know why you didn't ever go and fix that. But that was when I first reflected on, this was a power and control thing. So he felt threatened by my courage in telling him about how I felt about how another guy said something to me. But because he wasn't in control of how other guys' interaction with me would go, his threatening feeling pushed him to hit me as like a way to control how I interacted with other guys. And I didn't quite understand it until years later, doing domestic violence classes. And it's like, this coward, right? And I could only understand that today because, I would fight to the point where I would feel bad, like, oh, shoot, your eye is growing and I'm sorry for hitting you like that. Who don't look in the mirror yet because it's still growing. Like, that was the way that I would, in my mind, justify this idea of like domestic violence. I thought domestic violence was this person who just kind of let another person hit them and they didn't engage in hitting back. And then it became clear to me that he needed control. So we started a music band and I was considered the secret weapon. And I thought that was a good title up until I realized that I wasn't never able to go out and perform. They would just allow for my voice to be on the track, right? While they would be the ones out performing. I'm like, And I'll be in the house writing hits because I'm irritated and agitated. I'm in the house with kids all the time. And you come back home and you moody and you getting on my nerves and all this, you demanding of me, and just, it was out of control. And then I would go and want to apply to school, and I'll attend school. And then you coming up to the school and you're threatening my schoolmates. And then I'm like, this is weird. And then I want to go and work, and I'm working, and now you threatening my colleagues. And I'm like, this is super weird. Like, you do anything outside of the world, and I'm encouraging you. Like, you could do it, whatever you want to do. Your dreams are achievable. And you just want me to stay in the house where you are the only one that have access to my greatness. Mm-hmm. And waking up so unfulfilled because everything that I wanted to do was being like, hold on, you'll have time, hold on. I think about my 3 oldest. I have one that's I want to say 24. Mm-hmm. I have a soon-to-be 21-year-old, and I have my 19-year-old, and then the 10-year-old who experiences life way different from the way they experience life, right? They are being asked questions and given choices, and they're like, why don't you just tell me what to do? And I'm like, I'm telling you, it has a residual effect of how that power and control that they were exposed to shows up way different in my 10-year-old royalty, who'll be like, I want a burger with no mayo, extra pickles, no lettuce. Can you toast the bread and make sure that the cheese is kind of melty? When the other kids just be like, whatever you want to get me. And I'm like, no, baby, I want you to know what you want. Tell me what you want. But then again, those were the ones who were like seeing mom get irritated and agitated and beat down because I was like, I'm taking the kids to the park today. Or not saying it and then taking the kids to the park and then coming home and you over here starting to fight because the hood that you got watching me told you that I was at the park with the kids that day. And the kids sitting back like, no, mom, let's just stay in the house. And it got so bad to where I couldn't take them to the park. I couldn't check my own mailbox. I couldn't even take out my own trash can without one of his goons saying to him, I seen your wife outside today by the trash can, and him being like, you, and I'm like, dang,
you just walked to the curb.
I didn't see nobody. I didn't even know somebody seen me. I didn't say hi to nobody. I couldn't even pet the cat along the way.
Jeez. And all of that is so confusing because it's like, no matter how you're raised, inherently in our soul, we all know what love should be like. We're all born with that in ourselves, in our souls. We all know what love is and what it should be. So when in one hand you're treated lovingly, and in the next hand you're being controlled or beaten, like in the first instance that you told me, where you told him what happened with this other guy, and then he hit you, and then 5 seconds later he's patching you up and taking you home and taking care of you. All of that happened within an hour? That is so confusing. And here you are spending all this time, your head's spinning, trying to figure out what? You're trying to answer that question, what? For how long? For years. Yeah. It is so confusing. So you can't even pinpoint really that you're in domestic violence because you're too busy trying to appease your mates and trying to keep your children safe and happy and trying to figure out what the HE double hockey stick is going on. How your brain is like stuck in survival mode, trying to make sure that everybody is alive and breathing and eating and existing. You don't even have the capacity in order to consider that this is wrong and I gotta get out.
Yeah.
And then your community is gang life. So there is no life raft there.
Yeah.
So And that goes back to that seed that's in you that always knew to ask those questions, that always knew to, you know, that light that was always causing you to look outward.
Yeah. Yeah. Recently watched Aretha Franklin, and I remember as she was sitting with the musician, the piano player, and he told her that singing will save her life. There's artistic expression in everything, whether if it's the color that I put on my lips today or the way that I choose to wear my different hairs, because I do different hairs. The clothes that I choose to wear, the slang that I choose to use, or the properness that I choose to speak in, or the dance that I choose to engage in, or the way that I sit down with a piece of paper and allow for creation to take life, whether it be through writing or putting colors there, whatever it is. And while I was being held in the house and couldn't really have, telephones were non-existent. You wake up and the jacks would be destroyed. So there was no access to telephones. There was no engaging with computers. But what I did have was a sheet to lay out in the living room floor, some colors, some papers. We had our mouths, we had our bodies, and we would do stuff. We would just create. And I didn't know that was saving our life. I did not know that was the little thread that allowed for us to make it through those tragic moments. My daughter, on her 19th birthday, July 24th, she had a fashion release party as her birthday party, where she released her fashion line of Too Faced creations. Blew my mind when I was like, Too Faced, back in the day that was such a negative connotation, but today she's like, no, Mom, what you need to understand is Too Faced meaning like, I know how to live in this world and in this world all in once. Like, I had to learn how to be okay with the violence and the trauma and the stuff and still show up to school and ace the tests and be the one that the school wants to use as like the face and the voice when news reporters show up and say, how is this school doing? And it was amazing when she made that make sense to me. I was like, you know what? I stand with you with this two-faced thing. But before I was like, this is tricky. I don't know how to navigate this two-faced stuff.
Yeah.
So my 10-year-old is a content creator. I didn't know it until one day he was asked to have a peace talk in the city of Pasadena at the Pasadena City Hall.
Oh my God.
And invite the people to live peaceably with one another. And at the end of it, he was like, look me up on YouTube, Royalty Argale, like and subscribe. And I was like, what? What is happening here? Now, I had no insight into that type of world. I knew the sheet and the pens and the papers and the colors and stuff like that, but he was already like at his dad's house creating YouTube videos, and he's still doing that kind of stuff today. He's a very bright and strong personality, also empath at its most. So he will be the one to be like, when you said that, it broke my heart. And I'll be like, ooh, okay. Let me figure out how to be a better person for you.
Yeah. I know how that is. That a lot of that going on in my household. So my son and I are both empaths. So you can imagine how passionate this household is.
That's a beautiful thing, because that's what the responsibility of America is to create environments where we get to live in our empathy and our care and concern for ourselves and one another. And we get to be okay with prioritizing love over being driven by our fears. I've recently had to apologize to a few folks in my world because I'm conducting these power analysis with people who are coined as system leaders, working with people with lived experience. And when I started to share with some of my spiritual partners that I'm going to take on this process, they're like, LaRae, you got some spiritual stuff happening and you need to cleanse yourself. And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, well, notice wherever you have took action out of fear and make amends. And so that you can continue to powerfully step in faith. I'm like, oh, this is good stuff, because if I'm asking other people to do it, then I might be better off to help guide if I do it my own self. So I sent out a bunch of apologies for ways that I have harmed folks due to my fears, whether if it was fear if I was going to have enough food, if I was going to be able to get bills paid, if I was going to lose a relationship, lose a contract, or if I was just fearful from the way that I've been rejected and just chose to dismiss people or not include people or reject people my own self, right? Block people. I recently started playing the block people. I didn't block people before because my Christian beliefs didn't allow for me to, but today I successfully know how to block some people. With love. Mm-hmm. I hope that these conversations about addressing the power dynamics to hold America responsible to restore the right relationships with people, so that we don't have to be overwhelmed with big emotions, but we can cry when we need to, and we can laugh when we need to, and we can be vulnerable and not have to exert our power by hitting someone after we've shown our vulnerable side to them. But we can learn to release that vulnerability as courage and do it in loving ways and push the conversation forward and hold America responsible for really addressing the root of violence.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. You've given me personally a lot to think about. And thank you. Because I had some questions. One thing that I was not battling, but like confused about, and you set that straight for me. Something that it comes up, for instance. Okay, so spirituality, very big in my life, and I think I'm frustrated because I feel like I've hit like a ceiling with elevating my energy, and confused that feeling like I can't myself get any further without some sort of leadership or interaction. And I'm still not quite sure if that's true or not, but I know that there is something like an elephant in the room of my childhood that has not been processed. And I'm like, maybe what's keeping me from elevating any further with my spirituality is that elephant in the room of my childhood that needs to be processed. So my question for myself it keeps coming up, is that what's keeping me? Can I continue to progress spiritually without necessarily, because not that I'm avoiding it, it's just that it's a process and I know it's a process. So my thing is, do I need to focus on this elephant in the room 100%? And then once that has been either processed or disintegrated, or I can let it go, or whatever it's going to be with it, do I need to focus on that and just get that done? And that will free me up to evolve more spiritually. And so I think that you've answered that question for me, because that's something that's been bugging me every so often. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Because what you've just shared with me allows for me to see the essence of your ability to grow. And even asking yourself such a deep question as, do I need to look at this thing? Do I need to sit with this thing? Do I need to make peace with this thing? Or do I just know that there's something that comes on the other side of this thing? And do I just give focus to that other side of this thing?
Mm-hmm.
And that in itself is the essence of your growing, even without you saying, I felt like I've reached you're growing in the process of feeling like you've reached it, but then asking yourself questions. I don't know if you're familiar with Michael Beckwith, but he talks about life envisioning and soul envisioning and living beyond the ability to ask questions that you are knowing of. So accessing your soul purpose by asking questions that are way more spiritual, in a sense of like, this is not coming from my human knowledge, but more so from my spirit. Asking, what is it that I am to learn in this moment? What is the universe asking of me?
Mm-hmm.
What am I to fulfill? Who am I to encounter? What is it that I need to release myself of in order to fulfill this?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because I see my son is 6, so I first completely came to God when he was 4. So I've always known that God existed, but we were one of those families that went to church on Easter and on Christmas and stuff like that. So I always knew he was there, but there wasn't a one-on-one, conversation, communication, relationship. So I evolved with my spirituality fairly quickly, from understanding that God existed to jumping in, up to my scalp, to everything that had to do with God. I was doing so much research and growing, it was bananas, to meeting the right people and understanding that Christianity is a religion, is a man-made, it's a religion, and there's more to that. There's you have the cross, right? So you have this part of the cross is person to person. You have this side of the cross, and it's you and that's God. So it's a balance. So you have to have that one-on-one communication with God, and that's really what he wants, is to have that relationship with you. And to know that that's real, and to have that communication with him, and understand that spirituality that goes beyond Christianity, that's spirituality. And understanding that there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's all right. It is all right. And understanding that I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. So I'm I was a soul first, and now that soul is in this body. And then once this body is all wrung out, it's time for this soul to go on and have another experience, right? So why is my soul here this time? And what is my soul supposed to be doing every day? So
you almost made me cry.
Oh, don't. It's so I have the spiritual questions. I have spiritual warfare questions every day. And I know a lot of people are stop overthinking. I hate when people tell me that I'm overthinking. Hate it, because it's not overthinking. It's asking those spiritual questions that you need to ask yourself to make sure that you're on the path that your soul's supposed to be on every day that you're here. You don't have that much time to do the work that you need to do while you're in this body. And that's another thing that makes it hard not to be productive, because you got a lot of work to do while you're here. But I want to make sure, going back to that giant elephant in the room of my childhood, that's why it's a big thing for me, because it's scary I know I'm going to have to process it, and I'm in the process of doing that. But this counselor I'm with, she is half counselor, half spiritual, so she understands the dynamics. Like, we have to do it in phases. Phase 2 will start the process of dealing with what this is. And I still don't know yet if that's what's keeping me from, but like you said, because I'm asking these questions means that I am growing spiritually. I'm just so focused on growing this way as opposed to growing this way. So, but when you focus on the seed, because your childhood in your human experience is that seed. So if there's something traumatic there that happened and it's not processed, it's got to be processed. It has to be. Anyway.
I am a firm believer there's no coincidences. I'm a firm believer that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. I am a firm believer that nothing is never done, and it's something that's always happening. And because we are powerful creators, we speak things into existence. We give birth to more than just what we do as like mothers, but we give birth to ideas, to nations, to generations. There's something so magical, honestly, to tell you. When I began to learn more about the who you were, and I thought back to a conversation that Oprah had when she had the KKK on her show, and she seen how they were utilizing that platform to advance their work as KKK. And then from there, her shift and like what her purpose is and how she's able to bring people to these conversations. She started to be that much more intentional in the ways in which she shaped conversations, because she knew that conversations create. And so whatever it is in that childhood space that has moved you to a place to be able to hold space for these type of conversations, to allow for your human experience to be bold enough to hold space for this in this time, in this generation. It is not limited to, if you give focus to it, process it, whatever happens with it. Your spiritual self is not limited at all. And your human experience is expansive based on the questions that you ask. Because the tricky thing about the human mind is that it's going to search for whatever answer that you ask it.
Yeah.
You're doing it. Thank you so much, sis.
You're welcome. Thank you. And blessings to you and your beautiful little people. In your beautiful life, and your beautiful face, and your beautiful heart, and your beautiful soul, and the beautiful things that you're doing. Thank you so much. Like, heart, sister heart. Okay.
Yes. We're going to contribute to emit love.
Yes.
We're going to contribute to facing however we show up, and knowing that sometimes we are driven by fear, and that still is a place of growth. Because when we allow ourselves to humbly submit ourselves to love, there is perfect love casts out all fear. So therefore, all right, sis.
All right. Well, thank you so much again. We'll see you next time.